My name is Brianna Cole, I'm 29 years old, and 3 weeks ago at a dinner that was supposed to celebrate me, my father leaned back in his chair, looked straight at me and said, "I don't know where I went wrong with you." He didn't whisper it. He didn't hesitate, and worst of all, he said it like it was a joke. There were about 35 people in the room, friends, clients, family, all dressed up, all smiling until that moment. The laughter came late, awkward, thin. Like people didn't know whether to laugh or pretend they didn't hear it. I was sitting right next to him. My mom stared at her plate, my younger brother checked his phone like something urgent had suddenly come up. And me. I just sat there smiling, because I knew something he didn't. In less than a month, he would be sitting in a crowded ballroom, watching me speak and realizing, in front of everyone he respected, that I was never the failure he believed I was. But before I tell you how that happened, tell me something honestly. Have you ever been made to feel small by someone who was supposed to believe in you? Because that kind of silence, it changes you. I grew up in Dallas, Texas. In our house, everything had a purpose except emotions. Dinner wasn't about talking, it was about reporting. My father, Richard Cole, ran a construction firm, a loud man, a respected man. The kind of man people stood up for when he walked into a room. My brother, Ethan, followed him everywhere. Same voice, same posture, same ambition. And my mom, she existed in the background like soft music. Always present, never heard. Then there was me, I was the quiet one. The one who asked questions instead of making statements. The one who stayed up late working on ideas no one in that house understood. I remember one night, I must have been 16, I told them I wanted to start a small community project, a weekend program to help kids learn basic coding. I was excited, nervous but excited. My dad didn't even look at me. Ethan laughed. "Coding, what are you going to build video games for kids who can't even afford laptops?" And just like that, the room laughed with him, not loud, not cruel, but enough. Enough to make me stop talking. I learned something early in that house: attention was earned through success. And success only counted if my father understood it, so I stopped trying to explain myself. I just started working, quietly. Years passed, I moved out at 22. Small apartment, 2 jobs, no help. During the day, I worked as an assistant at a local nonprofit in Austin. At night, I built something no one knew about. A digital learning platform for underserved schools. It started small. 1 classroom, then 2, then 5. Every rejection email, every "this isn't scalable," every "we're not interested," just made me better. But I never told my family because I didn't want their opinion anymore. I wanted proof. Then came the dinner. My mom called me a week before. "Your dad wants to do something nice for your birthday," she said. I almost laughed. He had never celebrated my birthday, not once, but something in her voice made me believe this time might be different, so I said yes. I bought a simple black dress, nothing expensive, but it felt like a fresh start. That night the restaurant in downtown Dallas was packed, private room, elegant setup, people dressed like it was a corporate event because it was. For almost an hour no one mentioned me. They talked contracts, deals, expansions. I sat there smiling politely waiting, then someone asked me what I did. Before I could answer, Ethan jumped in. "She works with nonprofits," he said casually. "Not exactly a high-return career." A few chuckles, a few nods. And my father, he smirked, that same smirk I had seen my whole life. Then came the line I'll never forget. "I just wish she had a little more ambition." That's when I realized this wasn't a celebration, it was a performance. And I was the punchline. I didn't cry, I didn't argue, I just stood up, thanked them for the dinner, and walked out. And that night, everything changed. I didn't go home right away. I sat in my car in the parking garage, hands on the steering wheel, just breathing. No calls, no messages, not from my mom, not from anyone. That silence, it hurt more than what he said. Around 3 a.m., I finally went home. Kicked off my heels, sat on the floor, and opened my laptop. Not to distract myself, but because working was the only thing that ever made sense. That's when I saw it. An email, subject line, "Final approval National Education Grant." I stared at it for a full minute, then I opened it. My project, the one I built alone at night for years, had just been awarded a $3.1 million federal grant. I read it twice, then 3 times, because it didn't feel real. Just hours earlier, I had been humiliated in a room full of people. Now, I had something none of them could ignore, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel invisible. I felt ready. 3 days later, I got another email, an invitation to speak at the National Education Impact Summit in Chicago, a major event, hundreds of leaders, investors, media, and then I saw the sponsor list. My father's company was one of the main sponsors. I smiled, not out of revenge, but because this time the story wouldn't be controlled by him, it would be told by me. I didn't tell my family, not about the grant. Not about the invitation. For once, I wanted the truth to arrive without warning. The week before the event felt unreal. During the day, I kept teaching my small group of students in Austin. Same whiteboard, same old laptops. Same energy, but at night, I was building something bigger. Slides, data, stories, not just numbers, but proof that everything they laughed at was working. I didn't practice in front of a mirror like I used to. I didn't rehearse to impress anyone, I just spoke, out loud, in my apartment. Sometimes mid-sentence I'd stop and think, no, say it simpler. Because this wasn't about sounding smart, it was about being heard. 2 days before the summit, my brother called. That alone felt strange. We hadn't spoken since the dinner. Hey, he said like nothing had happened. I heard you're speaking in Chicago. Of course he did. I am, I said calmly. There was a pause, then he lowered his voice. Look, Dad's gonna be there, big crowd, big press, just don't make things awkward. I almost smiled. Awkward? You don't need to worry, I said. I'm not going there to fight anyone. Good, he replied quickly, because this isn't about you. I let that sit for a second, then I said quietly, yeah, that's where you're wrong, and I hung up. That night I slept better than I had in years. Because for the first time I wasn't preparing to be accepted, I was preparing to be seen. Chicago was cold that morning, sharp wind, bright sky, the kind of day that wakes you up whether you want it or not. The convention center was massive. Glass walls, polished floors, people moving fast, talking faster. I stood outside for a moment, just taking it all in, then I walked in. Inside, everything felt elevated. Name badges, camera crews, big banners hanging from the ceiling. And right there in bold letters, National Education Impact Summit sponsored in part by Cole Development Group. My father's name, everywhere. I spotted him across the room almost instantly. Same posture, same confidence. Surrounded by people who nodded at everything he said. For a second, I felt 16 again, standing at the edge of the room waiting to be acknowledged. Then he looked up, our eyes met just for a moment, and I saw it, not recognition. Not pride, control, like he was already deciding how this would go. I didn't look away, I just gave a small nod and kept walking. A coordinator approached me. Brianna, you're up right after Mr. Cole's keynote. Of course I was. I smiled, perfect. At 10 o'clock a.m. the lights dimmed, the host stepped on stage, voice smooth and practiced. Please welcome a leader in infrastructure and development, Mr. Richard Cole. Applause filled the room. My father walked up like he owned the air. His speech was exactly what I expected. Polished, confident, full of big words about growth, opportunity, legacy. The crowd loved it, they always did, but this time I heard something different. Empty space because I knew where those ideas came from and who they left out. Then he said it, everything I've built has always been about creating opportunities for the next generation. I almost laughed because the truth. The next generation was sitting backstage, holding a microphone he didn't know about. The applause rose again, he stepped off stage, and as he passed me, he leaned in slightly. Keep it simple, he said under his breath. No need to overdo it. I looked at him. Calm. No, I said quietly. This time I'll do it right, and I walked past him. The stage lights were bright, warmer than I expected. I could see rows and rows of faces, but none of them mattered, not in that moment. I placed my notes on the podium, then looked up. Good morning, I said. My voice didn't shake. My name is Brianna Cole. A small pause. And for most of my life, I thought being quiet meant I had nothing to say. The room stilled, not silent, but listening. When you grow up in a space where your voice isn't valued, you learn to shrink it. I let that sit. I spent years working on something people didn't understand, not because it wasn't important, but because it didn't look like success to them. A few heads turned, I could feel it, the shift. I tapped the remote. The screen behind me lit up. Bridge Ed Initiative, expanding digital access in underserved schools. Numbers followed, growth charts, impact metrics, then the line that changed everything, $3.1 million federally funded expansion, approved. A ripple moved through the room. Soft at first, then louder. I didn't look at him, not yet. For a long time, I continued, I was told that what I was building didn't matter, that it wasn't ambitious enough, that it wouldn't go anywhere. Now I looked right at my father. He wasn't smiling anymore, his posture was still straight, but his eyes had changed. Focused, uncertain. Maybe they were right, I said softly, a pause because I wasn't building something big. Another pause. I was building something meaningful. Silence, real silence, the kind that fills a room. Success isn't always loud, it doesn't always come with recognition. Sometimes it grows quietly until it can't be ignored anymore. No anger in my voice. No accusation, just truth. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that being underestimated isn't a weakness. I closed my notes, it's an advantage. For a second, nothing happened, then someone stood, then another. And just like that, the entire room rose, applause, loud, continuous, not polite, not forced, real. I stepped back from the microphone, and for the first time I saw him clearly, still sitting, hands clasped, eyes locked on me, not angry. Not proud, just still, like something inside him had finally gone quiet. I didn't smile, I didn't nod, I just stepped off the stage and walked forward, not toward him, but past him. Because this moment wasn't about proving him wrong, it was about proving myself right. I didn't stop walking, the applause followed me all the way down the aisle, but I didn't turn around. For years, I had imagined that moment differently. I thought maybe I'd look at him, wait for some kind of reaction, some sign that he finally understood. But when it actually happened, I realized something simple: I didn't need it anymore. Outside, the air felt colder than before, cleaner too, like I had just stepped out of a room I didn't belong in and into a life that was finally mine. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. Messages, calls, unknown numbers. I didn't check them, not yet. I just stood there on the steps, taking a breath that felt new. Brianna. I turned. It was him, my father. For a second, neither of us spoke. No audience, no suits, no performance, just us. He looked different, not weaker, just quieter. I didn't know, he said finally. His voice wasn't loud anymore, wasn't certain. I didn't know you were doing all that. I nodded slowly. I know. That hit him. You could see it, not like a dramatic realization, but like something settling into place. Heavy, real. You should have told me, he added, and there it was. That same instinct, that same belief that everything should have gone through him. I looked at him, really looked at him. Then I said calmly, you should have listened. Silence, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. He looked down at his hands for a second, then back at me. I thought, he started, then stopped. I thought success looked a certain way. I didn't interrupt. For years, he continued, I measured everything the same way: money, growth. Expansion, a small breath. I didn't realize I was missing everything else. That was the closest thing to honesty I had ever heard from him. No excuses, no defense, just truth. And strangely, I didn't feel angry. I thought I would. I thought I'd carry that moment from the dinner, hold on to it, use it, but standing there, it felt far away. I'm not here to fight you, I said. I know, he replied quietly. Another pause, then he said something I never expected. I watched you up there, and for the first time, he hesitated. I realized you didn't need me to believe in you. I held his gaze. I never did, not harsh, not emotional, just honest. That landed deeper than anything else. He nodded slowly, like a man learning something too late but still choosing to learn it anyway. I'm proud of you, he said, simple words, words I had waited years to hear, and yet they didn't hit the way I thought they would. Not because they didn't matter, but because they didn't define me anymore. I gave a small smile. Thank you, and I meant it, not as a daughter seeking approval, but as a person acknowledging the moment for what it was, nothing more. Nothing less. We didn't hug, we didn't fix everything. Some things don't get fixed in one conversation, but something shifted, not in the world, not in headlines, just between us, and honestly, that was enough. The next few days were loud. Interviews, invitations, articles, people called it a viral moment. They analyzed my words, turned them into quotes, shared them like lessons, but they missed the real story because it wasn't about the speech. It was about everything that came before it, the quiet nights, the rejection emails, the moments no one clapped for. That's where the real story lived. A month later, I was back in Austin, same classroom, same whiteboard. But this time we had new computers, better equipment, more students, real growth, not imagined anymore, built. One afternoon, one of my students, Jamal, looked up at me and said, Miss Cole, how did you make all this happen? I smiled. And for a second, I thought about everything I could say, the long version, the painful version, the complicated version, but instead I kept it simple. I didn't stop, I said, that's it, that's it. He nodded like that made perfect sense. And maybe it did. Before I end this, let me ask you something. What would you do if the people who doubted you had to sit in the front row of your success? Think about that, because here's what I learned: you don't need to prove them wrong. You don't need to embarrass them, you don't even need to change their minds. All you have to do is keep going, quietly, consistently, until the truth speaks for you. This isn't a story about revenge, it's about something stronger. Self-worth, the kind no one can give you and no one can take away. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you've ever been underestimated, just remember, silence isn't the end of your story. Sometimes it's just the beginning. This is Real Life Revenge series. Like, share, and subscribe for more stories that remind you you don't need permission to become who you were meant to be.